sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, dhammang saranang gacchami, sanghang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Our respectful salutations to our Pinmat Loku Swami Namaste, our most venerable teacher Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya. So we are here today to talk about our great enlightened being, our Supreme Buddha. And as you remember, we talk many things about our Mahabodhisattva. Mahabodhisattva is the person who was coming towards the Buddhaship during this greatest Samsara, fulfilling the perfections, that's a paramita, and collecting good merits and practicing wholesome deeds. So we are here to talk about many things based on our Acharya Manusso, the amazing book written by our Pinmat Swami Mahanse, our teacher Bhante. And based on this book, we will talk many things about Supreme Buddha and Mahabodhisattva as well. So, as you remember, we talked about the great effort he made when he was coming, wandering, and during the existence. Do you hear me clearly, everybody?
Am I not, sir?
Okay. So, so after becoming the super, so I will give you time to talk about many things. Maybe if you have questions or comments about our talk, or maybe the Supreme Buddha, maybe the Mahabodhisattva, you have the opportunity to talk to me or to talk. If you have questions, you can ask. We can talk maybe at the end. I will give you the time, okay? And maybe this episode will be very interesting because I have stories about our Mahabodhisattva, stories from the Jataka tales, okay? And then that would be very interesting and like it a lot. So after becoming our Supreme Buddha, the Mahabodhisattva became the Supreme Buddha in this the Mahabhadra Kalpa as the fourth enlightened Buddha. Gautama Supreme Buddha he became. And after becoming the Supreme Buddha, he preached about his journey, and he said that his untiring effort was amazing. And then, so he said that the suffering, the tremendous suffering he experienced during the time period, fulfilling the perfections during the time when he was coming, was amazing and tremendous. And we have no words to talk about the suffering he experienced. He talked. And then the sacrifices he did, maybe fulfilling dana paramita. You know, this word dana is the generosity for giving. So countless times, incalculable times, he gave his eyes. He donated his eyes during the samsara, and he donated his limbs for the happiness of others. When he was coming up towards the Buddha-ship, okay, being born in different kinds of realms, he donated his limbs. Maybe sometimes he offered his life for the happiness of others. For to fulfill the dana paramita, the perfection of giving, perfection of letting go, the perfection of generosity. Okay, that was the main idea that he had deep in his mind. Okay, and then so the sacrifices he made was amazing. And then after becoming the Supreme Buddha once, so he explained things he experienced in the samsara when he was coming to Venerable Sariputta. You know, Venerable Sariputta Bhante was the foremost in wisdom in our dispensation. And then he explained that the experiences he gained uh, in the repeated existence, okay, he said that some recluses and some Brahmins, some people from different religions, they say that repeated wandering. So if someone is born in the samsara, you know this word samsara is the rebirth, it's repeated existence, repeatedly being born and living and dying again and again reborn. This is the samsara. And during this samsara, some people say that so you have a number of times to come to this world, to be born and to die, and then automatically you will reach the liberation. You will end up this samsara by being born, by repeating wandering. Okay? You have a certain number of times to come to this world to end up suffering. And that was, right? It's not something that you want to practice to fulfill the liberation. You don't have anything. Some people say, but the Buddha explained that it's not Venerable Sariputta. Sariputta, that's not true. So if someone comes to this world again and again and again, and at the end of coming, if he becomes liberated, the best example is me. The Buddha explains. The best example is me. If if someone is released from this longer samsara by being born for certain times, the best example is for me, because I have pondered, I have come this but samsara countless times. If someone is being released, if someone becomes released by being born, I have been released before. It is not true. And then some recluses and some Brahmins, maybe the people from another religions, they say that the dwelling in some places, living in some places is just the way, certain number of times dwelling in certain places is the way for the liberation. But it's not true, Buddha explained. If someone is released from suffering, if someone can get liberated by dwelling in certain places, the best example is me, because for example, if I explain it a little bit, if someone is born in hell maybe countless times to end up with suffering from samsara, so it is not the way that we want to find out the liberation. It is not the way. The suffering being suffered is not just a way to achieve the liberation. It's not way. If it happens, actually, the Mahabodhisattva is the best example because he has experienced many, many, maybe billions of times being born in different kinds of realms. By doing that, if someone becomes liberated, the Bodhisattva has been liberated before. It's not, right? And then next, the Buddha explains to Venerable Sariputta Bhante, offering sacrifices. So doing many, many rituals maybe is just the way of finding the liberation. Some people say, but Buddha says that it's not. If someone gets liberated by offering sacrifices or doing some kind of ritual, the best example is me that I have been released before. So doing that is not the way that we can find the ultimate liberation, the Buddha explained. And then maybe fire sacrifices or offerings, not. Until he meets, you remember the name of our Supreme Buddha before. mm, So he met Deepankara Supreme Enlightened Buddha. And before Deepankara Supreme Buddha, you remember the time period 20 Asankhya Kapas ago. Uh, uh, 20 Asankhya Kapas ago, he was coming through the samsara. And then 4 Asankhya Kapas ago, he met Deepankara Supreme Enlightened Buddha. And before this Deepankara Supreme Buddha, he found out the perfection, the 10 perfections to fulfill for the Buddhaship. And from that point, he was coming, wandering through the samsara, fulfilling the 10 perceptions, 10 perfections. Until then, he tried many, many, many things until he meets 10 perfections. He tried different kind of ways to find out the way to become the Buddha, but he did not find it. And then he, he, he searched for these 10 perfections and started fulfilling with the same idea to become the Buddha. See, uh, the great enlightened being, the Supreme Buddha, was amazing. And then his sacrifice was not something simple. We want to be very grateful, very, very grateful and respectful to our Supreme Buddha because he found out the way of liberation. He found out the way that someone can be free from this suffering. And he preached that out of his compassion, he gave this amazing path for us to practice. So we are so grateful for that. And then uh, if you remember the 10 perfections, that's a paramita. So he practiced Sila paramita. Sila is, the Sila is virtue. Even he is born in the samsara, even as an animal. So he was virtuous and he practiced Sila. Even as a lion, he did not kill. Even as tigers or maybe maybe as yakas, yakas are demons. They eat the flesh of, they drink the blood of other people or something. But Mahabodhisattva was also born in such kind of realms, but he was virtuous. He is the amazing sacrifice he had, and the amazing way of letting go was so incredible. Okay, so we will talk about the 10 perfections with the in talking about the stories we have in Jataka. So I have a beautiful Jataka story to talk with you. Maybe we can have some help of some people to read this Jataka story. This is maybe you can read. You see my screen. Makadeva Jataka. Makadeva Jataka. In this Jataka story, you see the practice of renunciation. Renunciation, you know that renunciation is letting go of everything and go forth into homelessness and practice something spiritual is the renunciation. So the Mahabodhisattva was born in this world, we will see the information. So I need someone else to read the first part of the story. I will give this chance to Dinara and Dehan. Both.
I
Both
was
read the first part of the story.
my son answered. Once upon a time, in the city of Mithila, in the kingdom of Videsh,
Videsha.
there was a king named Makadeva who was virtuous and ruled righteously for continuous periods of 84,000 years. He had respectively entertained himself as a prince, ruled as a victory, and ruled as a king. All these long years had he lived, when one day he said to his barber, "Let me know my friend barber, when you see any gray hairs on my head."
Okay, so remember the lifetime, the lifespan they had in the time he was born as Mahadeva, the king Mahadeva. Mahadeva was a king and he had luxurious things in the kingdom, in his palace. And remember the time period he enjoyed as a prince, and then he ruled as the second king, maybe, and then he ruled the country for 84,000 years. And then, the idea he had in his mind was just the renunciation, to let go of things as he gets the opportunity to do that. What was the opportunity he got for his renunciation? He asked his barber, "If you see any gray hair on my head, in my head, let me know about that." For what? I just want to let go of things and go forth into homelessness to practice my spirituality. And that was the time he said, right? So that was our Mahabodhisattva practice his renunciation. And then I will give you this chance to read. Will give this to know.
So one day, years and years after, the barber did find among the raven locks of the king a single gray hair, and he told the king so. "Pull it out, my friend," said the king, "and lay it in my palm." The barber accordingly plucked the hair out with his golden tongs and laid it in the king's hand.
No, the barber did what he was asked to do, right? So he pulled out the hair and kept on in his palm, and then Sicily and Minoli are really excited to of reading the next part.
The king had at the time still 84,000 years more to live. However, at the sight of that one grey hair, he was filled with deep feeling. He seemed to see the king of death, Mara, standing over him, or to be cooked within a blazing butt of leaves.
I rejoice in the reading, the merit you collected by reading, okay? Beautiful reading. So, the king had more 84,000 years to live. Okay, he had in his life, in his same life, but he did not enjoy the royal kingdom, the pleasures in the royal kingdom, the royal palace. And he says that the death is coming to me. Even though he had 84,000 years more to live, he says that the death is coming to me. I just want to be very diligent in my practice. And then he let that go, and then we will go ahead with reading. Anybody else? If you raise your hand, I can identify. Okay, Esana. Esanda. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your names.
Asanda.
Asanda today.
Stupid Makadeva, he cried. Grey hairs have come upon you before you have been able to rid yourself of immoralities. And as he thought and thought about the appearance of his grey hair, he grew aflame within. The sweat rolled down from his body. This very day will I re-announce the worldly life of the ascetic life.
Okay, very good. So that was our Mahabodhisattva. Mahabodhisattva was very, very curious about the ways of letting go, and then the ways that he want to fulfill the dasaparamita, the perfection. And that's why when he gets a chance to do that, he got that. Even he sacrificed everything in his life. See, the opportunity he got was when he sees a gray hair on his head, he thought that, oh, this is my time of letting go of the kingdom, then the worldly things in the king's palace. And then he let go of everything and went to the Himalayas. And being an ascetic, he practiced the austerity practices. Maybe he meditated a lot. And then even he did not have Dhamma to practice from a Supreme Buddha. He became an ascetic and practiced of letting go, practiced of loving kindness. He practiced patience, he practiced compassion to everybody, and then he developed his mindfulness. And after that, like he was born in a Brahma world for the merit he gained. So see, so that was so we see how he came through wandering and in the repeated existence in the longer samsara. You understand that, okay? That was the dedication of our Mahabodhisattva. Mahabodhisattva was very diligent in his practice to come to this point to become the Buddha. Why? To give us this precious Dhamma, to free us from the suffering in samsara. You understand? So we are so grateful. Hmm? He was such an amazing person as Mahabodhisattva. He sacrificed. And then that was the renunciation. That was one of the stories we meet actually in this Acharya Manuso book. Prabhu Swaminathan explains that story a lot. And then we will talk about another story.
Sir,
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Actually, what is letting go in the mind? I mean, we are thinking, and we know that when we know that the thought is coming to our mind, how to let it go?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a beautiful question. Letting go is not something. Letting go is not something that we can do. Can apply all the time. So letting go is just the way that you find if you have any unwholesome feelings in your mind. That's just the point that you want to let go, right? You meet Dhamma, but you don't want to let go Dhamma. It's not the right time, right? Letting go is the thing. Whenever you find, with the help of Dhamma, you find an unwholesome feeling I have. This is an unwholesome thought I have in my mind. And that's something that you should let go, right? Not everything. Okay? And that helps.
Okay.
Yeah. So, as Mahabodhisattva's letting go was, the worldly pleasure is not the way of fulfilling the perfections. Okay? And he just want to fulfill the perfection of letting go, or maybe renunciation, letting go of worldly pleasures in search of finding the liberation for nirvana. Okay, letting go is something beautiful. Letting go is just the way that we want to practice of unwholesome thoughts or unwholesome feelings.
Uh-huh.
That's how you want to keep in your mind.
Okay.
Clear, right? And then, if I talk more about the uh, Mahabodhisattva story, I have something to share with you too. That was another Jataka story. This was uh, Shantivadi Jataka. Shanti. Uh, in English, you see that Shantivadi, or maybe when it comes to to Sinhala language, we say Shantivadi or Kantivadi, which is Hollywood, uh, which means the patience. How he practiced patience. Okay, patience. You also learn about patience and then see how our Mahabodhisattva practice patience during his samsara. I just give this chance to Natasha Devini, if you're comfortable.
Once upon a time, a king of Kasi named Kalabu reigned at Benares. At that time, the Bodhisattva came to life in Brahmin family, endowed with 80 crores of treasure in the form of a youth, and when he was of age, he acquired a knowledge of all the sciences at Takasila and afterwards settled down as a householder.
Thank you for your reading. And then when you read the text, sometimes you find some difficult words from the religion. Don't worry about that. So your reading is very good, okay? So Shantivadi Jati, you understand a little bit about this story, and then we'll go ahead, okay? Okay. And then this part I was happy to give to Asara.
Yes, Swaminath, I can read. On the death of his parents, looking at his pile of treasure, he thought, my kinsmen who accumulated this treasure are all gone without taking it with them. Now it is for me to own it and in my turn to depart. Then he carefully selected persons who by virtue of their almsgiving deserved it and gave all his wealth to them. And entering the Himalaya country, he adopted the ascetic life.
Okay. Okay. Again, he had that pronunciation. We'll go ahead with the story we have the Jataka. I just give this chance to um, I don't see your face, so Subodhu.
Am I silent, sir? There he dwelt a long time, living on wild fruits, and descending to the inhabited parts for the sake of getting salt and vinegar, he gradually made his way to Benares, where he took up his abode in the royal park. Next day he went his rounds in the city for alms, till he came to the door of the commander-in-chief, and he is being pleased with the ascetic for the propriety of his deportment, brought him into the house and fed him with the food prepared for himself. And having gained his consent, he got him to take up his abode in the royal park.
You understand, right? Okay. So, you know, ascetics, maybe when he was living in Himalayas, they often comes to the city for salt and maybe limes or maybe pickle or something. Okay. And then uh, Peter and let me see if you know.
Now one day, King Calabu, being inflamed with strong drink, came into the park in great pomp, surrounded by a company of dancers. Then he had a couch spread on the royal seat of stone, and lay with his head on the lap of a favourite of the harem, while the girls who were skilful in vocal and instrumental music and in dancing provided a musical entertainment. So great was his magnificence, like to that of Saka, Lord of Heaven, and the king fell asleep.
Very good. So he came to the city and then you understand the story. And next time I will give this chance if you raise your hand. Okay. Okay, Hiru.
And my Swamin answered. Then the woman said, He for woe's sake, we are provided music. He is gone to sleep. What need is for us to sing? Then they cast aside their lutes and other musical instruments, and set out for the garden, where trampled on by the flowers and fruit-bearing shrubs, they were soon disported themselves.
Okay. So you said that the Mahabodhisattva came to the royal park to stay, maybe meditating, maybe sitting to have some peaceful time. During that time, the king came to the royal park with his the queens, and then they were enjoying sensual pleasures in the park. And then all of a sudden, oh, king was asleep, and then the ladies were wandering here and there. And then we go ahead with the story. And then maybe you raise your hand again. And then Dimal, yeah.
So, at this moment, the Bodhisattva was seated in this garden, like a royal elephant in the pride of his vigor, at the foot of a flowering sal tree, enjoying the bliss of retirement from the world. So these women, in wandering about, came upon him and said, Come, ladies, and let us sit down and hear somewhat from the priest who is resting at the foot of this tree, until the king awakes. Then they went and saluted him, and sitting in the circle round him, they said, Tell us something worth hearing. So the Bodhisattva preached the doctrine to them.
Okay, so see that the so the Bodhisattva was sitting under a tree, and then the ladies came to them, and then they questioned about something precious, some dhamma to share, and then they were happy to listen. See, next time was not peaceful. We will give this chance to, meanwhile, the royal favorite, that part will be given to Saga. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name.
I will read Panta. Meanwhile, the royal favorite, with a movement of her body, wake up the king. And the king, on waking up and not seeing the women, asked, Where are these wretched gone? Your Majesty, they are gone away, and are sitting in the attendance on a certain ascetic. The king in a rage seized his sword and went off in a haste, saying, I will give this false ascetic a lesson.
So king was not happy when he woke up. He found that the ladies were gone. And then when he was looking for everywhere else, he found something. Maybe this story is not going to be very peaceful in the next time. I will this chance to Anki.
Then those of the women that were most in favor, when they saw the king coming in a rage, Intent took the sword from the king's hand and pacified him. Then he came and stood by the Bodhisattva and asked, "What doctrine are you preaching, monk?" "The doctrine of patience, Your Majesty," he replied. "What is this patience?" said the king.
Okay, what was his practice? He practiced patience. Patience. Kanti or kanti in Pali. Okay? So he is practicing patience. So how does he practice? That was the question. We will go ahead and then we'll see. That was something very terrible the Mahabodhisattva experienced when he was practicing patience. And then, Dinodhan, are you okay today? It's fine. Okay?
Am I, Sansa?
Mm.
The not being angry when men abuse you and strike you and revile you, said the king. I will see now the reality of your patience. And he summoned his executioner. And he in the way of his office took an axe and a scourge of thorns, and clad in a yellow robe and wearing a red garland, came and saluted the king and said, "What is your pleasure, sir?"
That was not something good. Okay? So is that how you practice your patience? I will see now the reality of your patience. The king was very angry and cold, and he assumed his executioner good, and he, in this way of his office, and took an axe. So if we go ahead, maybe this chance is to.
Bhante, is it me?
Okay, sure. Here's the chance.
Yes, Bhante. And the Bodhisattva's outer and inner skins were cut through to the flesh, and the blood flowed. The king again asked, "What doctrine do you preach, monk?" "The doctrine of patience, Your Highness." He replied, "You fancy that my patience is only skin deep. It is not skin deep, but is fixed deep within my heart, where it cannot be seen by you, sir." Thank you, Bhante. Bhante, Bhante.
So the king was curious about his patience and where is the patience remain in the body, maybe on the skin, and then Mahabodhi says, "No, it's not on my skin. Not if you peel my skin, no, you cannot find my." So that maybe the foolish king was maybe collecting very bad merits for his suffering, and then this chance is for demand.
Again, the executioner asked, "What is your pleasure, sir?" The king said, "Cut off both the hands of this false ascetic." So he took his axe and placing the victim within the fatal circle, he cut off both his hands. Then the king said, "Off with his feet." And his feet were chopped off, and the blood flowed from the extremities of his hands and feet like lac juice from a leaking jar.
So where is the patience in Mahabodhisattva? Not on his skin, it's not on in the limbs he had, even though someone cut his limbs. No. He had that patience for what? To fulfill the idea to become the Buddha. He's not the Buddha, still he is practicing in the journey. Okay, we will go ahead. So Minupa is angry.
Again, the king asked what doctrine he preached. "The doctrine of patience, Your Highness," he replied. "You imagine, sir, that my patience dwells in the extremities of my hands and feet. It is not there, but it is deep-seated somewhere else." The king said, "Cut off his nose and ears." The executioner did so. His whole body was now covered with blood.
Dinara.
My son answer. Again the king asked of his doctrine, and the ascetic said, "Think not that my patience is seated in the tips of my nose and ears. My patience is deep-seated within my heart." The king said, "Lie down, false monk, and thence exalt your patience." And so saying, he struck the Bodhisattva above the heart with his foot and betook himself off.
Okay, very good. I rejoice all of your merits in the merit you have done, and thank you. So, if we talk a little bit about these two stories, you remember the Makadeva is for letting go, maybe the renunciation, and then Shantivadi Jatake, the perfection of patience. I give this chance to someone else to talk about these stories. What did you learn? And how did you understand the Mahabodhisattva's practice during the samsara to become peaceful? Just if you get the idea and then talk about these things, I mean.
We must be patient and we learn to give away things.
That's very good. That's very good. So the patience was the key, and then it was one of the perfections of Mahabodhisattva, and then fulfilling during the samsara. And then someone else to talk about the letting go of Mahabodhisattva being born as Makadeva, King Makadeva. Even though he had lots of times to live more, he let that go and went for in formlessness. If you talk about that too, maybe if you get this idea.
Avasarsan answer. So it kind of shows how detached the Bodhisattva was in a previous life during his time as the Bodhisattva. Because as a king, if anyone was a king at the time, they had like the best kinds of food, the best kind of luxuries, and the fact that King Makadeva lived for 84,000 years as king. Just in that time period, he had probably lots of happiness in that time. But the fact that he was able to let go of it and become an ascetic shows how he's able to see the true nature, and he was able to detach himself. So that's something that only a bodhisattva can do. And so if anything, we should show respect to the Buddha, because in his previous life, he was able to detach from so many things.
That's actually true. So, so when it comes, that's very, very, very interesting. When it comes to the next story, we talk about the patience. So patience is something very beautiful. Patience is not something just mere bearing. It's not just to be okay with the suffering. It's not. So see, when the limbs are cut from his body, maybe when he had that tremendous suffering, his mind was protected. He did not have any anger in his mind. He did not get any resentment or any bad feeling or any negative thought into his mind towards the king, maybe towards the people around him, maybe towards the executioner. He had that shanti or the patience with loving kindness, with compassion, with everything, with the good qualities in his mind. That was amazing and that was most precious, maybe, rather than being okay with the suffering. So, in the world, people suffer a lot. Maybe they fight each other, they go for wars, maybe many things happen in the world, but their minds are not okay to face that suffering. But Mahabodhisattva was very different from that. His mind was very, very precious and very pure and very clean and very genuine. And he did not want to have any impurities, any unwholesome feelings, any unwholesome qualities. He did not want to develop in his mind, even though he had that tremendous suffering, even though he faced He faced many things, even though he met many cruel people during the samsara. He was okay. He was okay with the feelings, with the minds, and as well. That is the most incredible thing that we find in the character of Mahabodhisattva. Did you get that idea? Okay. So that's how he came to become the supreme Buddha, yeah, for the happiness of everybody in this world out of his compassion. So I will give this chance to ask any question if you have about the Mahabodhisattva, about these stories. And I have another story actually to share with you if you do not have any questions. Please, if you have questions, you can ask.
Bante, I have a question. So everyone or any being who is searching for nirvana has to attain these 10 perfections, or is just to become a Buddha?
It's a very good question. 10 perfections are just for the Mahabodhisattvas, for the Bodhisattvas who had the idea to become the Buddha. So the other people who follow the teachings of the Supreme Buddha do not want to fulfill the 10 perfections. We do not want to practice the Dasakarmi or 10 perfections to reach the ultimate liberation or arahantship. Right? But we can practice the patience, we can practice letting go, we can practice dana, giving and everything. We can practice, but the 10 perfections are just for the Mahabodhisattva in search of the Buddhahood. So we have the pure Dhamma preached by the Supreme Buddha. That was just Noble Eightfold Path. We just need to follow the Noble Eightfold Path to if when we need to understand the noble truths of Supreme Buddha. So we do not want to fulfill 10 perfections to reach Nibbana. But we can practice in a way, but not as perfections. Did you get a clear idea? If Rohini Swami is listening to us, maybe he can share something more with this question.
I'll try some answer. I have a question. So a Pacheka Buddha needs to, if he wants to become, a Buddha like the Apachek, to like become a Pacheka Buddha, even though he wants to become a Pacheka Buddha, can he, does he have to practice the 10 perfections for that?
Yes, we talked about Pacheka Buddhas as well, but the Pacheka Buddhas also need to practice something for his Buddhaship, for their Buddhaship, but we are not, I'm not sure, I don't know about that clearly, that they practice 10 perfections for the Pacheka Buddhas, but they need to practice something more during the, I'm not sure those are not, are they 10 perfections or not. I will maybe find out something more with that, and later I can share it with you.
Bom today.
So we talk many things about our Mahabodhisattva, and this story about our prince Temiya. See, the prince Temiya was born in a king's family. That was our Mahabodhisattva. Remember the name Temiya. If you pronounce it as Temiya, Temiya, Prince Temiya. And then as a, as an infant, uh, he was only 1 month old, and then he was on the hand of the queen in the king's palace, and then king in the kingdom, the army brought 4 people to the king, and then the king ordered them for the maybe as a penalty or something for the punishment to cut their limbs, and then to chase them away from the country. That was the punishment that king gave to these 4 people. And then that infant was on the hand of the queen. Yeah? That infant, our Mahabodhisattva, was listening to this punishment. And all of a sudden, he started recollecting his past life. And then he found that the infant, the Temia prince infant, found that he had been suffering in hell for 84,000 years. Last time he was in hell in Ustada, the name of that hell was Ustada. He was suffering for 84,000 years in hell. And then for what bad merit? As the king, he ruled the country. And then he gave bad decisions to people. Not knowing about the bad merit, he gave that bad order. He made a little bit of mistakes, and for that bad merit, he suffered 84,000 years in hell called Ussade. And then that infant remembered the suffering he experienced. Okay? And then 1 month old, and then he was scared, he was terrified about the bad decisions his father is making right now to give these poor people the bad punishment. And then he was very determined not to speak. With the help of Devas, it happened. Okay? So that Prince Temir was determined not to speak. And he pretended as he was deaf. And he pretended as he was nothing. He did not talk, he did not listen, he did not talk. It's like he was like he was nothing. He pretended he was very intelligent, he was very uh, careful, but he pretended that he cannot do anything. And then for 16 years, he pretended like that. He did not speak a word. And then the king wanted him to talk. And then for that, king made many, many tricks. Huh? And the venomous serpents was put on his body to scare him to scream, but he did not speak a word. Okay, and then many things he did. At the end, the king decided that we do not want this child in our king's palace. He's not good for the kingship, and then we want to kill him. And the army took him to the forest to behead of this prince Temia. Now he is 16 years old, but he is not deaf. He's not he can speak well and he understands well, but he pretended. And then all of a sudden that prince, before the death, he started speaking. And he said, I am a good person. I am very intelligent. I can speak, but I did not speak in fear. I am so frightened about the suffering that my father is going to experience for his bad decisions, he said. And then he said that I do not want to enjoy the luxurious things in the palace and say goodbye to everybody and went to Himalayas. And being an ascetic, he practiced meditation. And after that life, he was born in Brahma world. That was the determination. So came through the samsara fulfilling the 10 perceptions. Good merit we collected, and we are happy to share this good merit with all the heavenly beings as well. And especially this merit be dedicated to our Pinvat Lokaswami Mahamse, who gave this precious Dhamma to us. May he be well, happy, and live long, and be very fortunate to understand the noble truths in this samsara. Sadhu, sadhu. May all of you who came to listen to this good Dhamma be well, be happy, live long. May all of you be very fortunate to practice the precious teachings of our Supreme Buddha and understand Four Noble Truths very soon in this thousand of the past. So I am happy to give you a blessing. You can receive this blessing worshipping. Sabbitiyo vivajjantu sabbarogo vinasatu माते भवत्वन्तरायोऽस्ति दीर्घायुको भव भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वबुद्धानुभावेन सदा सुखि भवन्तु ते भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वधर्मानुभावेन सदा सुखि भवन्तु ते भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वसङ्गानुभावेन सदा सुखि भवन्तु. May you be well, may you be happy, may you be free from all the sufferings in the samsara.